Okay, we'll see if I can do this without too much rambling. It is almost 5 p.m. and my brain is tired. All right, problem 1. We are writing this equation in standard form. So a few things about standard form. Apparently my hands are tired too. A few things about standard form. The pattern is ax plus by equals c. Some things to remember about standard form is 1, no fractions or decimals. All whole numbers, integers. 2, a must be positive. That was pretty bad. All right. 3, we obviously need it to be arranged like this, so x and y need to be on the left. And 4, a, b, and c, these integers, cannot have any common factors. So with that, let's go ahead and try to write this in standard form. First, I'm going to deal with the no fractions or decimals. You can put some of these steps together and do this problem quicker, but I'm going to do each thing on its own. So first, I want to get rid of fractions and decimals, which means I need something to multiply by that will eliminate the 10s and the 5. Since 5 times 2 equals 10, I can multiply the entire equation by 10, and then negative 1/5 times 10 is negative 2. Everything else, the denominator is just gone. So now there's no fractions or decimals. A must be positive. All right, A is not positive. So I need to make A positive. I'm going to do that by multiplying both sides by negative 1. Multiply both sides by negative 1. Now I have 2x equals negative 21y plus 19. Number 3, it needs to be organized like this, where a and b, x and y are on the left. So that means I need to add the 21y. 2x plus 21y equals 19. And lastly, there cannot be any common factors. So 2, 21, and 19 don't have any common factors, but if you're wondering, I have a low battery, if you're wondering, there is a way to tell. You can only do 2 numbers at a time. Where you have the math button, numbers, GCD is greatest common divisor. It's the same thing as greatest common factor. So maybe the 2 numbers I'm most worried about is 21 and 19. So 21, and then there's this comma, 19. Their greatest common factor is 1, which means there's nothing else I can divide this by. So this is now in standard form. We need to identify A, B, and C. A is 2, B is 21, C is 19. Okay, next problem, kayaking. The linear equation y minus 12x equals 25 describes the cost to rent a kayak at the East Bay Paddle Company, where x is the number of hours a person uses the kayak, and y is the total cost of the rental. Write the equation in slope-intercept form and interpret the parameters of the equation in the context of the situation. So a couple of things that are important that they told us. X is the number of hours a person uses the kayak. Y is the total cost. We were given the equation, so we don't even have to come up with it, but we do need to write it in slope-intercept form. So let's go through the forms of an equation real quick, just so that you have it on this video. We already talked about standard form and how standard form was ax plus by equals c. I'm going to trade to a pen that writes a little darker on this. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And point slope form is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. So we'll refer back to these anytime we're dealing with these lines. These will not be written on the board, so you do have to remember them. So here we need to write this in slope-intercept form, which, if you notice, y is isolated. So that means we need y to be isolated. They give us the equation, y minus 12x equals 25. We need y by itself, so we're going to add 12x. And now we have y equals 12x plus 25. This is now written in slope-intercept form, so we are done with that part. And then it says, and interpret the parameters of the equation in the context of the situation. The parameters they're talking about are the slope and the y-intercept. So the slope is 12. And what does 12 mean in the context of renting a kayak? If x is the number of hours you have to use the kayak, then multiplying that by 12 to get part of our cost would tell us that this kayak costs $12 per hour. So there is an hourly fee of $12. The y-intercept is the point 0.025, which represents, if you use it for 0 hours, it's still going to cost you $25. That means that there was some sort of $25 base fee or rental fee that you have to pay just to get the kayak. All right, problem 3 was a doozy of a problem. I will let you know right now, the similar problem that is on your quiz is more clear than problem 3. I am looking at your quiz right now. Yeah, so it is way more clear than this question, but this is the question we have. So the book answers it one way, and my brain kind of answered it another way, because the question left out one crucial piece of information, and that is when the rain started falling. They didn't tell us that, which means the starting time is up to us. The meteorologist first recorded the rainfall at 1 p.m., so the book uses 1 p.m. as our starting time, as time 0. When I've been working with a few students, I used noon as time 0, just so that this would be 1 and that would be 5. So I'm going to do both. That way you can tell if I worked with you versus if I didn't, versus if you looked it up in the book or whatever. So first we have to define the variables. The book defines the variables x equaled the hours past 1 p.m. When I worked with some students, I defined the variables X were the hours past 12 p.m. Y is defined as the rainfall in millimeters. Same thing here. So this problem does not give you any type of slope. What it does is it gives you 2 points. It gives us the point at 1 p.m. the rainfall was 11.5, and it gives us the point at 5 p.m. the rainfall was 16.7. So if you're going from the book's definition and we're going hours past 1 p.m., then this time would be 0 hours. At time 0, there was 11.5 millimeters of rainfall. And then at 5 p.m., well, 5 p.m. is 4 hours past 1 p.m. So this would be 4, and then this is 0.7 millimeters. If you were working with me and we started at noon, then we would have 1, 11.5, and 5, 16.7. I will let you know the slope is the same either way, so I'm not going to calculate slope on this white paper. Find the slope and the y-intercept, then write an equation. The slope, remember, is y2 minus y1. Over x2 minus x1. Let's see. All right, this is our slope. So y2 is 16.7. We're going to subtract the 11.5. x2 is 4 minus 0. I'm going to stop using all the colors now. When you do this on your calculator, you end up with 1.3. So our slope is 1.3. Our y-intercept, or our b value, happens when x is 0. So from this point, our b value was 11.5. If you were working with me and we did this, we found the same slope, but our b value was 11.5 minus 1.3, because this was already at 1 hour, so we had to go backwards an hour. We had to take off the 1.3. So we had 10.2 as our y-intercept. Next, we're being told to write an equation. Remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Since our m is 1.3 times x plus our b value is 11.5, there's our equation. We found the slope, we found the y-intercept, we wrote an equation. Here we found the slope, we found a y-intercept. Our equation would be virtually the same, except that we started at noon, so our y-intercept is different. There was less rain at noon. Okay, Part C, estimate the total rainfall for the day at 10 p.m. A big thing about 10 p.m. is we need to know how far past 1 p.m. it is. This is 9 hours past 1 p.m., which means we are looking for when x equals 9, what is y? So y equals 1.3x plus 11.5. Then when you put this in your calculator, you get 23.2, which means if we are estimating the total rainfall, we would say 23.2 millimeters at 10 p.m. If you were working with me and you started at noon instead of at 1, then 10 p.m. is 10 hours later. So you have y equals 1.3 times 10. And because we had already adjusted our y-intercept, we actually get the same exact answer. So both equations work. If we had a question on a quiz or a test that was very ambiguous like this, that it didn't tell us when our starting time was, I would take either. Or you could just ask me to clarify that in class. That's a really appropriate question to ask because this question was not written clearly. So that would be something really, really appropriate to ask even during a quiz or a test. All right, backside. This is a word problem. Nathan spent all Saturday reading a book. By 11 a.m., he had read 144 pages. He took an hour break for lunch. Then by 2 p.m., he had read 240 pages. Write an equation in point-slope form that represents the number of pages y that Nathan read in X hours since he began at 9 a.m. So let's define our variables. That's always what we want to do first. In fact, I should probably make you a little list about what we should do during a word problem. First thing we should always do is obviously read the problem, right? But then we're going to define the variables. Sometimes there's only one, sometimes there's two. Occasionally there'd be three, but we're not there yet. They define them for us, but I feel like this is such a long word problem, it helps to rewrite it. So X represents specifically the hours since 9 a.m. So that is going to color these times. 11 a.m. is 2 hours past. So at 11 a.m., X is 2. 2 p.m. is 5 hours after 9 a.m. So 2 p.m. X equals 5. Y is the pages read. That's some terrible handwriting. All right, again, they give us 2 points. We have 11 a.m., in other words, X equals 2. He had read 144 pages. So that means we have the point 2, 144. And then by 2 p.m., which is 5 hours after he started, he had read 240 pages. So then we have the point 5, because it's 5 hours after the 9 a.m., 240. There is a problem on your quiz. Let me make sure, but I'm almost positive. There is a problem on your quiz where we have a starting time like this, and so you need to adjust things based on the starting time. Now, here's the nice part. This equation needs to be written in point-slope form. We love point-slope form. It's hard to remember sometimes, but it's way easier to write when you're given 2 points like this. So the first thing we need to do is find the slope. Sorry, and then I didn't finish making this list. We defined the variables. In this case, we found points. Sometimes we would write equations. Sometimes this would be write equations. But now since we have 2 points, we need to find the slope or calculate slope. And then for this one, we need to write in point-slope form. So we have to find our slope. Remember y2 minus y1, so 240 minus 144 over x2 minus x1, 5 minus 2. This is 96 over 3, which is 32. That means he is reading 32 pages per hour. That's our slope. We need to write this in point-slope form. You can use either point. It does not matter. So that means that I would accept 2 answers here. Y minus 144 equals 32, x minus 2. To use the 2, 144, make sure that they're minus. Or y minus 240 equals 32, x minus 5. Both of these are correct answers. Both of these would give you full points. And if you got both of these into slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, they would be the exact same. They are the same line. All right. Number 5, solve the system of equations by graphing. The first step to solving a system of equations by graphing, doing anything by graphing, is to get this equation into a form that we can graph. Sometimes we're able to graph from standard form. In this case, our intercepts are pretty gross. So our first thing will be to convert to slope-intercept form. That is the y equals mx plus b. We need to do that to both of our equations. So our first equation, 2x plus 4 equals 3y. Y is almost isolated. We just have to divide everything by 3. So 2/3 x plus 4/3 equals y, or in other words, y equals 2/3 x plus 4/3. That is one of our equations. Our other equation, 6y minus 4x equals -10. I need to eliminate the minus 4x, so I'm going to add 4x. 6y equals 4x minus 10. Divide everything by 6. 4 over 6x minus 10 over 6. We can simplify this. 2/3 x minus 5/3. That's our other equation. After we have converted to slope-intercept form, we need to compare and graph the functions, the lines. In this case, when we compare, we notice that these two lines have the same slope, but different y-intercepts. What happens when you have the same slope but different y-intercepts is you end up with parallel lines. Those don't look very parallel. But you end up with parallel lines, which means there is no solution. Or in other words, our solution is the empty set. On your quiz, if you have something like this that ends up being no solution, as long as you've shown some work and done something like this where you've circled the slopes or something to show that you know why there's no solution and that you didn't just guess because you didn't want to graph the lines. Granted, I wouldn't want to graph these lines either. Those are some pretty gross y-intercepts. But you need to know why graphing the line is not necessary here. Usually, you would compare and graph the functions, and then once they're graphed, you would find the intersection. This is what we're going to do on the next problem. The next problem we're going to do on our calculator, but we're going to still follow the same exact steps. So our first equation, 2.5x minus 1.9y equals 24. Sorry, my paper came up there. We need to solve for y, so we subtract the 2.5. Negative 1.9y equals negative 2.5x plus 24. And then we have to divide everything by negative 1.9. I tried doing this in my calculator at first, but the decimals here are not wonderful. And I'm trying to find my version of the quiz that I just finished taking. Well, okay, here it is. On your actual quiz, let's see. On your actual quiz, there is a decimal that is not wonderful. So here's what you can do to combat that. We know we need to divide by negative 1.9. So we're just going to put it into our calculator that way. Negative divided by a negative is positive. So we're going to say 2.5 over 1.9x. And then positive divided by a negative is negative, so minus 24 over 1.9. When we go to enter this into our calculator, we're going to enter it that way. 2.5 divided by 1.9, close your parentheses, x, minus 24 divided by 1.9. That way I don't have to round yet. It says round the coordinates to the nearest hundredth, but I don't want to round too early because that sometimes screws up my lines, and then my answer would be slightly different. So that's my first line. My second line, negative 3.2x plus 6.1y equals 2. We're going to do the same thing here. We add the 3.2x, so 6.1y equals 3.2x plus 2. And now we're just going to write it 3.2 over 6.1x plus 2 over 6.1. And this is how we'll put the second line into our calculator. So y equals 3.2 divided by 6.1x plus 2 divided by 6.1. And then you're going to hit graph. If you don't see it very well, go to Zoom Standard, Zoom 6. That goes back to the regular standard window. Now I can't see this yet. So first I'm going to try Zoom Fit. That's Zoom, and then the number is 0. You can scroll all the way down to it, or you can just hit the number 0. And it changes your window to be something that will show you more of the function. But see, it's still not enough. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out because I want a bigger view. When you do this, it tells you where do you want your center to be. You can move this. Well, I want a better view of this far area where it looks like the lines are coming together. I just don't know yet where that's going to happen. Hey, look, now I can see the intersection. Once you can see the intersection, second trace, you are looking for your intersect, which is number 5. It's going to ask you 3 questions. First curve, and it puts a dot on one of your lines. Enter. Second curve, it should put a dot on the other line. Enter. Guess. Unless these 2 functions intersect more than once, this guess doesn't matter. So we're just going to hit enter again. And now it tells us the intersection. The directions told us to round to the nearest hundredth, which means that our intersection is at the point 16.38, because 379, 8.92. That's our solution. All right. Next we have systems of equations. We need to solve these systems in the method indicated. So the first one, we have to use substitution. So let's talk about substitution. When you solve by substitution, the first thing you do is isolate one variable. It doesn't matter which variable, it doesn't matter which equation. So we want to go with whatever's easiest. It looks like the y is going to be easiest to isolate. So let's isolate that variable. 3x plus y equals 2. We're going to subtract negative 3x plus 2. Hey look, y is now isolated. Now is where the actual step of substitution occurs. We substitute into the other equation. Don't substitute it back into itself. That means we take the negative 3x plus 2 and we put it in our other equation instead of y. So our other equation was 6x plus 2y, but I'm going to substitute, equals 11. Y I just found to be negative 3x plus 2. Now after I've substituted, I now solve the resulting equation. So I distribute. I have 6x, and then this is negative 6x plus 4 equals 11. In this case, 6x minus 6x is 0, so I'm left with 4 equals 11. The problem with the statement 4 equals 11 is that it doesn't. 4 does not equal 11, which means this is no solution or empty set. Usually, we would end up solving for x. We would get a value here, and we would plug that value back in for one of these x's. It would not matter which. We would solve for y. But because the x was eliminated and we don't have anything left, because we were left with a false statement, there's no solution. Elimination is our other method. For elimination, first thing you want to do, I should write elimination at the top. first thing you want to do. Multiply to get opposite x's or opposite y's. Here's what I mean by that. Right now I have 3h and 2h, 4k and negative 2k. I want either 3 and 2 to be opposites, exact opposites. So in that case I could have like 6 and negative 6, but it would require me changing both of these. Or I could have this be 4 and negative 4. That would only require me to change this negative 2 to a negative 4, which happens if I multiply by 2. The only issue is I have to multiply the entire equation by 2. So then I get to rewrite my first equation because I didn't have to mess with it. And then I have 4h minus 4k equals 6. Now, we have multiplied to get opposite kind of y's in this case. So our next step is to add the equations. If we set this up correctly, we should have a variable eliminate. 3 plus 4 is 7. 4 plus negative 4 is 0. 1 plus 6 is 7. 0k isn't even a k. So we just have 7h equals 7. So now we solve that one-step equation. It will always be a one-step equation. And it's pretty easy to solve. We divide by 7, h equals 1. After you do this, you plug in your answer to either original equation. And solve for the other variable. So we now know that h equals 1. So I'm going to use my first equation again, because it doesn't matter which equation I use. 3h plus 4k equals 1. And now I know h equals 1. So 3 plus 4k equals 1. I subtract 3, which means 4k equals negative 2. Divide by 4. Negative 2 divided by 4 is negative 0.5 or negative 1/2. This means my solution is the point 1, negative 1/2. Now how do I check my answers? I check my answers by plugging them both back in to both original equations. So I have 1, negative 0.5 is my answer. 3h plus 4k equals 1. 2h minus 2k equals 3. And I'm plugging in 1, negative 0.5, 1, negative 0.5. Still a low battery, I know. 3 times 1 plus 4 times negative 0.5, not 0.05, 0.5, equals 1. 2 times 1 minus 2 times negative 0.5 does equal 3. So I got the 1 and the 3 that I should, which means my solution of 1, negative 0.5 is correct. So that is the right answer. Last problem. Sorry, this is such a long video. I should talk faster, but I've talked slow the whole time, so I'm going to keep talking slow. Latoya makes a total of 52 bracelets and necklaces to sell at a craft fair. That's not 52 bracelets, 52 necklaces. That's 52 bracelets and necklaces to sell at a craft fair. Each bracelet takes 8 minutes to make, and each necklace takes 11 minutes to make. She spends exactly 7 hours and 44 minutes making the jewelry. Write and solve a system of equations, and then basically we're interpreting our answer. So, this is a word problem. The first thing we're going to do is define our variables. I'm going to say that X is going to equal the amount of bracelets Latoya makes, and Y is going to equal the amount of necklaces. Next, I need to write my equations. There's a few different ways that you can write this, a few different ways you can approach it. Latoya makes a total of 52 bracelets and necklaces. We don't know how many bracelets, we don't know how many necklaces, but we know that the total is 52. So X plus Y equals 52. Then we know that each piece of jewelry takes time. Specifically, each bracelet takes 8 minutes. So we have 8 minutes per bracelet, plus each necklace takes 11 minutes, so 11 minutes per necklace. And she spent 7 hours and 44 minutes. Now, because we have 8 minutes, 11 minutes, we need this number to be minutes. Right now it's hours and minutes. So we remember that there's 60 minutes in an hour. We do 7 times 60 plus the 44 more minutes. And we get 464. So this equals 464 minutes. All right, that is our system. We have now written it. We now need to solve the system. I'm going to solve by substitution. 1, because our earlier substitution problem had no solution, and 2, because it's pretty easy to isolate either one of these. So I'm going to isolate y, which means I would have y equals negative x plus 52. That's what I'm going to plug into my other equation. So I have 8x plus 11y equals 464. And for y, I got negative x plus 52. So now I distribute. I have 8x minus 11x plus 572. I combine my like terms. 8 minus 11 is negative 3x. Subtract the 572. And divide by negative 3. I end up getting x equals 36. Now remember what x represented, the bracelets. So when it says how many of each type of jewelry did Latoya make, she made 36 bracelets. And, okay, how many necklaces? We know that she made 52 in total. So we can say 36 plus y equals the 52, and we can solve here. We get y equals 16. So she made 16 necklaces. That's how many of each type of jewelry she made. How much time, how many minutes did she spend making each of the 2 types of jewelry? This is where we need a little bit more math. We had 8 minutes per bracelet, and there were 36 bracelets. So 8 times 36. She spent 288 minutes on bracelets. For those of you keeping score at home, that is 4 hours and 48 minutes. And then we need 11 minutes per necklace, and she made 16 necklaces, so 11 times 16 is 176. So she spent 176 minutes on necklaces, which is 2 hours 56 minutes, but they specifically ask how many minutes, so we don't need to convert these back. So how many of each type of jewelry did she make? She made 36 bracelets and 16 necklaces. How many minutes did she spend making each of the two? She spent 288 minutes on bracelets and 176 minutes on necklaces. That is the end of our quiz review. I'm sorry that it is 45 minutes long. Please feel free to skip through to whatever you need.